Hey everybody, we're going to go ahead and try and get caught up from my little episode. Today in class, if you'll remember, we talked about the circadian rhythms or our biological rhythms. So if you're looking at the PowerPoint, we went from slide 23 to about slide 37, or no, 36, 35. So today we're going to start with, or with this video, we're going to start with slide 35 and try and knock out the stages of sleep. In class tomorrow, we'll do hypnosis and altered state of consciousness, and we'll kind of see where we are from there. So, and then I'm also going to, if you've not already seen it, I'm also going to post the Freud stuff. So, but as we jump into sleep, the sleep-wake cycle itself, and we talked a little bit about this in class, is circadian. It's once every 24 hours you go through the sleep-wake cycle. However, within the sleep-wake cycle, that actually is ultradian, meaning it happens multiple times. So the sleep-wake cycle itself is circadian, but what happens within the sleep-wake cycle is ultradian, so it'll happen many times throughout the night. So, and how this works is you relax and try to go to sleep. Your brainwaves cycle more and more slowly. You can see this on brainwave measurement devices, those little lines that go up and down, kind of like an earthquake. As you fall more into sleep, they kind of slow down. They don't cycle as much. And then once you fall asleep, you'll go through 4 stages of quiet sleep before you go into a active dreaming stage. So this is sort of the intro of where we're kind of going. So this is a graph that kind of gives you an idea of the sleep stages. It's kind of hard to read, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. There's some other graphics that make a little more make a little more sense. So, but here are the different waves, and these are in your Quizlet. But what this does, this kind of shows you what they look like. All right. When you're awake, like now, as you're watching this, your brain waves would be, if we were measuring your brain waves, this is essentially what it would look like. All right, they're low voltage, meaning they're not very high, not very big waves. They can be random depending on what part of the brain is closest to one of those electrodes that's being fired. And they're fast, real fast waves. All right. Now, when you get to drowsy, now you're looking at 8 to 12 hertz. All right, these are called alpha waves. All right, and they look a little more like this. Once you hit stage 1 sleep, they kind of slow down. They spread out a little bit. These go 3 to 7 hertz. All right, these are known as theta waves. At stage 2, you got 12 to 14 hertz. You get what are called sleep spindles at these areas here, and K complexes, which is this real big jump here. Stages 3 and 4, things really slow down. As you can see right here, these are delta waves. These are very high voltage, but they're slow waves. And then all of a sudden you hit REM sleep. Again, low voltage, random fast with sawtooth waves. That's these things here, kind of look like a sawtooth. If you had to pair REM waves with other waves, what would they most closely look like? I'll give you a chance to look at that. I would suggest they are closest to awake. And essentially, that's kind of what REM sleep is. It almost mirrors being awake. And again, that's where we get a lot of our dreamings, where we think we're awake. So you can see how those two mirror each other. But again, make sure we know alpha waves are slow waves of a relaxed awake brain. Delta waves are large, slow waves of deep sleep. And then hallucinations, we just kind of threw that in there, is false sensory experiences. Hey, there's a tiger on the wall. No, there's not. All right, so stage 1, sleep. You do not know the exact moment when you enter stage 1, sleep. So this is after you lay down. And generally it lasts only 5 to 10 minutes. You're easily awakened from this stage. And in many times we'll probably insist you were never asleep. This happens to you all a lot in class. All right, you kind of hit that stage 1 sleep. You may not think you're asleep. You may actually hear some of what is being said, but your brain reacts as if it is asleep. That is stage 1. You may report dreamlike sensations of falling upon being woken up. You've seen people, when you wake them up, they kind of grab like they're falling. Okay, that is stage 1. So again, only 5 to 10 minutes. Stage 2, your brain waves slow down even more, but you get little brainwave bursts called spindles that are common. You can kind of see some right here. Here's a kind of a good idea of what some of this looks like. So here's your awake, your alpha waves. Stage 1 looks similar, but it's a bit slower. Here's your sleep. Here's your spindles, the little bursts of energy. First time you enter this stage, it will last about 20 minutes. So when you go to bed tonight, essentially this is what will happen. You'll lay down. You'll go through stage 1. You don't know when you'll enter stage 1. And in fact, you may not even believe if you are woken up real quick that you're not in stage 1, but you'll be in stage 1 for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then the first time you go through stage 2, you will be in it for about 20 minutes. But look at this down here. Over the course of the night, you'll actually spend half of your sleep in stage 2. So keep that. So as we're going through the stages, keep that in mind. Stages 3 and 4. A lot of times you'll see just stage 3. Sometimes you'll see 3 and 4. And sometimes you'll see these lumped together, kind of like the way it is here. But after about 30 minutes of sleep, your brain waves will slow down a lot. Your brainwave cycle are less than 1 per second compared to 15 per second when you first fall asleep. So it's way slowing it down by at least 15, a factor of 15. The stage is called slow wave sleep or delta sleep for the delta waves. The first time you're in these stages, it will last about 30 minutes. Remember I said these sleep cycles are ultradian, meaning they happen several times a day or several times when you're asleep. You're going to go through all of these cycles many times. And as you go through, each one will be different depending on how long you've been asleep and how many times you go through it. So the first time you cycle through these stages, you're in it for about 30 minutes. So let's say when you're falling to sleep tonight, within an hour, you'll have hit stages 3 and 4, or you'll have completed about stages 3 or 4. And then, now we're going to get into REM sleep, and many of you have heard of REM sleep. The previous 4 stages have been called NREM or non-REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. The reason is, when somebody's in REM sleep, their eyes, and I don't know if you'll be able to see or not, but your eyes will move kind of back and forth real quick, rapid. Hence the term rapid eye movement or REM sleep. First 4 stages are non-REM or NREM. Once you hit stage 4, your brainwaves will begin to pick up a little more speed and strength. You'll move back up through the stages 3, 2, and 1, and then you enter your first period of REM sleep. So you'll go to sleep, you'll hit stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and then you come back up, and then when you come up, that's when you hit the first set of REM stages. And here's a brain scan of what the differences are. You've got a lot of activity going on in your brain when you're in REM sleep. as opposed to stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is what I was wanting to get to. Here is a good example of a typical night's sleep. Again, it's not every night, and it's not, some people are going to be different. But if you go to bed at 11-ish and wake up at 7-ish, what is that, 8 hours? All right, this is a typical 8-hour night of sleep. This is what it looks like. All right, so you'll start up here at awake. The first time through, you bypass REM sleep. Oh, wrong way. You'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes in stage 1, and then you'll drop down to stage 2 and spend about 20 minutes stage 2. Then you'll hit stage 3, and here in this one, you've got stages 3 and 4 together. First time, you're looking at a half hour-ish to 45 minutes if you're going. I think stage 4 was a half hour, so I don't know how much time they're putting 3. But again, here you're looking at stage 3 and 4 from about 11:20 to about 12. So you're looking at about an hour in stage 3. Then you start coming up, hit stage 2 for 20 minutes. And then you bypass stage 1 and boom, hit REM sleep. And you're only in REM sleep for a short amount of time. This looks like, another half hour or so? That's not even a half hour. Maybe 20 minutes you're in your first cycle of REM. And then you bypass 1, go back to 2, spend another 20 minutes in 2, and then you're in stages 3 or 3 and 4 for another probably 45 minutes. And it kind of comes back up. And look at this right here. Around 2 a.m., there are many times people will actually wake from their first set of for their first cycle, first 2 cycles. Not always, and maybe it's a short amount of time. But how many times have you looked at the clock and you always seem to wake up at the same night? Well, it happens quite a bit, all right? So you'll go through a couple times, maybe wake up. What's some of the things that you notice about this as the night goes on? All right, well, some of the things I want to point out. Your non-REM stage 3 and 4 gets shorter with every cycle until cycle 5, and you don't even hit stage 3 and 4. Notice that? Also, look at your REM sleep. It increases as the night goes on. So if cycle 1, you're in it for maybe a half hour. Cycle 2, maybe 15. Cycle 3, maybe another half hour, maybe another hour and a half, or maybe another 45 minutes. And then cycle 5, this looks like about an hour. Okay, so the amount of time you spend in each stage changes with each cycle. The longer you sleep, the less time you spend in stage 3, and the more time you stay in REM. And then the same thing with stage 2. The more time you spend in stage 2, or the more time you sleep, the more time you spend in stage 2 until you get to cycle 5. And then notice in stage 1, we only hit stage 1 when we come out of being awake. So awake to stage 1, even here, awake to stage 1, and then here, awake to stage 1. So I'd suggest pausing this and kind of studying this a little bit, but I'm going to move on now. All right, some characteristics of REM sleep. A lot of times we become sexually aroused. It doesn't really matter the type of dream unless it's scary. And if it's a scary dream, you do not get that arousal. I think then you have more of a fight or flight. So if you have blood going to general areas that you get blood when you become sexually aroused, that's less blood that goes to other areas of your body to kind of get you to where you need to go. So in REM sleep, we generally will become sexually aroused. However, unless it's a scary dream. And it repeats. The other thing I want to make sure you get on this one is that it repeats every 90 minutes. So generally we have 100-minute dedicated to REM sleep per night. And if you look at this chart we were just at, every 90 minutes or so, it's about an hour and a half. So 11, this is 12:30. So you hit that about 12:20. Again, about 2, 3:20. So about every 90-ish minutes is when you hit that cycle. And here's another that shows you how things change. After 2 hours of sleep, you're spending the same amount of time in REM sleep as you do in stages 3 and 4, or stage 4, however you want it to do it. Here again, you can see the amount of time you spend sleeping is the less amount of time you spend in this stage 4. And the more time you spend sleeping, the more time you spend in REM sleep. The first period of REM will not last long, as you kind of saw on that chart. When you go through it, it'll refer back to stage 1. Again, this is a 90-minute ultradian rhythm. It means it happens multiple times in a 24-hour period. Eventually, stages 3 or 4 are skipped. The last 4 hours of sleep are spent between stage 2 and REM. And this is kind of interesting. It shows the amount of sleep we should get during our lifespan. Notice that as through infancy, really as we're born, as we get older, the amount of sleep we need drops. You gotta think, if you've been around a newborn baby, they sleep, first month or the first half a month, first 2 weeks are sleeping 16 hours, which is good for parents. The problem is they're not all at one time. They're usually in chunks. And that kind of drops really up until you get to adolescence. Again, you're still, and this has actually changed. I'm not sure how old this is, but now they're suggesting adolescents, 14 to 19, get 10 hours. All right, so REM sleep leads directly to dreaming, and we're going to hit that for a little bit. We've already talked about Freud. I'm going to give you a little more on Freud. Freud had many prominent thoughts on dreaming as well as the non-conscious mind. Freud said that dreaming had 2 functions: to guard sleep and to serve as a source for wish fulfillment. So, essentially what Freud was saying was we dream for things we wish would happen or wish we could do or things like that, or wish would happen to other people. He distinguished between 2 things: manifest content, which is the dream storyline. Now, we all know we've had dreams that just don't make any sense. But he called that manifest content. Manifest content, this is what you say, tell me about your dream. Okay, here's what happened. That's sort of that storyline. I first, for some reason, we were at Smoky Valley truck stop, and then here came a trucker that had a wife and his kid with him. The kid smelled bad. I don't know. I'm just making it up as we go. But your dream storyline, this is if you were telling somebody else, he would consider that the manifest content. And then the latent content would be the symbolic meaning. Well, Freud might say, well, the truck driver is symbolic of your brother who is carrying the load for the family or whatever. But this is the symbolic part. So example, symbols of containers and long rigid objects could symbolize the male and female genitalia and give clues to sexual conflicts. Remember with Freud, he was very interested in sexuality, in sexual deviancy, hence his theories on the Oedipus and Electra complexes. So a lot of, and that would be, I hadn't even read this down here when I was talking about a semi-truck. Semi-trucks contain or generally are haul long, rigid objects. So he might say, I'm dreaming, about some sort of male genitalia or female genitalia or sexual conflicts. Again, that was Freud. And as I said in the last video, most of what Freud said has been kind of debunked at this point. What do we dream? Generally, 8 out of 10 dreams have a negative emotional content. So it's kind of odd. We dream negative things. And this could be why Freud came up with some of his theories that he did. We, a lot of times, have dreams about how we failed at something, how we're being attacked, pursued, rejected, or struck with misfortune. You know what? I had a dream once that I jumped into off of a cliff into a river for fun. Everybody was doing it. When I did, my hand hit the water like this, and it lacerated my entire hand in strips. It was kind of weird. I don't know. And you could pull the strips off and see the muscles in my hands. It was weird. All right, but again, that was sort of a negative emotional content dream. I did not jump right, hence the issue with my hand. And believe it or not, take a look at this one down here. Contrary to our thinking, sexual dreams are very sparse, meaning they don't happen very often. They happen in men maybe 1 in 10 times, and in women maybe 1 in 30. So about once every 10 days and maybe once a month for women. So again, we think men are always thinking about sex, or women or men are always dreaming about it, or whatever. Generally, statistics don't bear that out. That is a popular culture trend, which science has kind of proven wrong. Truth about dreams. Despite his theories, there is no solid evidence to support Freud's interpretations of latent dream content, meaning symbolism. Dreams do, however, vary by age, gender, and culture. So what I dream may be different than what other people dream. Children are likely to dream about animals that are large and threatening, while us adults dream about pets. I remember having a dream once as a kid that I was left at home and there was a giant bear come running out of the woods and was trying to get into the house. I don't know why I remember that dream. Women are more likely to dream about men and women, whereas men are more likely to just dream about men. Now I'm talking about non-sexually here. Men are more likely to have dreams that have other men in them, generally as buddies or friends or maybe enemies. But women have a tendency to have equal amount men and women in their dreams. Do want to talk about culture. Many studies have supported the theory that culture plays a large role in dream content. And here's some example of some issues that continually come up in our dreams. In the country of Ghana, it's attacking cows. Cows, attacking people and killing them. You got to think, in Ghana, cows. I'm guessing that ranching is a large part of the economy there, and cows are very important. With us in with Americans, a lot of people dream about public nakedness. I've had that dream many, many times, where you wake up and you're either in just your underwear, you show up at a public place, usually at school, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be church, could be a business or whatever, but you show up and you're either naked or you have just your underwear on. And I think there's even a scene in Inside Out that talked about that. However, Mexican Americans have a tendency to dream more about death. So there is strong support for the idea that dreams reflect life events that are important to the dreamer. Right? Looking good in public, making sure cows do what's expected, and staying alive. Especially in places like Mexico, where it can be a bit more dangerous in a lot of places due to the cartels and all that stuff. Why do we have dreams that seem random? Okay. Generally, the first dream connects with events from the previous day, and I've had that happen before. Almost verbatim, I would dream the same thing that happened earlier that day. But as we dream throughout the night, whatever themes are built on that dream, they tend to build and grow and grow. And that's a lot of times that's why dreams will be, they may seem like one big dream, but it's actually broken up into many different ones. Many times the final dream is the one that's remembered the most vividly, but has very little to do with the previous day's events that lay ahead. It's just like a game of telephone. You know, your brain or your dreams are sort of playing telephone with each one down the line, and if something changes slightly, that change is going to be amplified and then changed more and then changed more. So your first dream may be about a conversation you had with your best friend at the beginning of the night, and then by the end of the night, the dream is about you are a secret agent and you're trying to break into the Russian consulate or whatever. There are other theories. I want to make sure you know activation synthesis theory. This is a theory that says dreams are a result of a sleeping brain tries to make sense of its own spontaneous bursts of activity. You know, even when you're sleeping, you still have brain waves and your brain is still acting. This theory suggests that when your brain is active, it's doing a bunch of random firing. Your brain doesn't know what's going on because it's asleep. So it tries to make sense of what's happening. And so it produces images, it produces storylines, produces things as sort of a way to make sense out of the random firing. All right. These are some more modern theories, and these are going to be fairly important. So we're going to spend some time on this before I kind of wrap up. The first theory is called the information processing theory. And this basically says an important memory-related function of sorting and shifting through the day's experiences. So your brain will sort of remember everything that happened during the day, probably during that first stage of sleep. Remember the events, the conversations, and information process theory suggests that as we dream, we sort of sort and shift through the day's experiences to decide whether we need to remember things, forget things, whatever. The physiological function, neural activity during REM sleep, which provides necessary brain stimulation and growth. So the reason why you dream is to stimulate brain cells to grow. It helps with creating dendrites on the neurons, and it helps because it's forcing them to work. Similar to lifting weights helps your muscles grow. Under this physiological function theory, the brain activity while you're sleeping allows your brain to grow. Of course, I've already talked about activation synthesis. And then the last one is cognitive theory. Dreams are the embodiment of our thoughts. A dream is a pictorial representation of the dreamer's conceptions. If I have a conception that Mrs. Emmons is just a mean person, all right, then I'm going to dream that. Or she's going to be represented in my dreams as super mean, as being unrealistic and all that stuff, maybe larger than life. So that's cognitive theory. I would maybe take a picture of this, or again, write these down. These are the ones I've just went over. This was Freud's. Talking about wish fulfillment. Again, we've already talked about that. But again, this is just something to be keeping in mind. And that's all I'm going to do today. Again, those of you that prayed for me and talked to me and all that stuff, thank you. We will try and get caught up. So we will see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll do sleep issues and probably altered states of consciousness. Have a good day.